Good morning. Hello. Welcome to the July meeting of the Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission. This meeting is broadcast on several TV stations, so please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphone. This time, Dallas, we'd like to take the roll, please.
Yes. So for the record, the Knox County Historic Zoning Commission has no business this month, so they will not be meeting. So for the Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission, Commissioner Blackburn,
Here.
Commissioner Eason, Commissioner Bradley, Commissioner Fox is excused, Commissioner Hearns is excused, Commissioner Mitchell, Commissioner Randazzo,
Here.
Commissioner Tillman,
Here.
Commissioner Webster.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Yes, that is 6 present.
Thank you, Dallas. At this time, we'll have swearing in of the speakers. If you wish to speak on an item, please stand now and answer with "I do" to the following affirmation. I solemnly affirm that the testimony I'm about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. We ask that all speakers please limit their presentation to 5 minutes, and we also ask that speakers please give their name and address before speaking, and please sign in at the desk by legibly printing your name and address. Appeals of any Historic Zoning Commission decisions may be made to Chancery Court within 60 days of the date of this meeting. At this time, I'd like to have approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion and properly seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Lindsay, do you want to go on the staff reports, or do you want me to go ahead and make the motion? Okay. The second item on the printed agenda is Old North Knox 424 East Oklahoma. They've asked for postponement on that, so I need a motion to postpone that.
I'll make a motion to postpone.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Good. All right.
There's just one level 1 COA issued since the last meeting. This was at 213 Dedrick in Mechanicsville. The applicant is repairing and replacing in kind the woodlap siding, sections of their asphalt shingle roofing, the fascia and soffit as needed, and installing new gutters.
We'll go into our certificates of appropriateness. We have one case before us today at 4th and Gill at 1202 Luttrell Avenue. This is case 7C23-HZ.
So this is the proposed replacement of 13 windows on the house's second story. These windows to be replaced include 8 6/1 double-hung wood windows and then 5 multi-light wood casement windows. The proposed replacements are included in the application packet. They include 8 wood double-hung windows. The specs describe them as a colonial pattern, and the applicant has confirmed they'll be 6/1 instead of 6/6. And I can show you this from the website. The 6/6 is shown there. That's what the colonial is. And then the modified colonial is a 6/1. And the specs describe grids between the glass and sculptured grids. The casements are the casements in the specs are 3 light simulated divided light wood windows. They're paired. And the applicant has noted that the windows are painted shut and provided some images of wood rot on the interior of some windows. And I have some additional photos in my email that I can show as we discuss. So some of the findings, the majority of these windows do appear original, though some windows are replacements. The right south side elevation, which is in the top right of the screen, features single light casements and a double hung window that don't match the others. In February 2005, the HCC approved wood 6/1 double hung windows on the rear elevation on that dormer right here. The 6/1 double hung windows are appropriate for a craftsman house. They reflect those first story windows. Paired casement windows and more narrow openings, as we can see in these here on the front dormer, are also consistent with the style. We've received limited information on the current windows condition. We have a photo of wood rot on the set of casements. Additional information on the windows condition contributing to replacement should be submitted. The design guidelines note that replacement windows should be the same overall size as the originals, with the same pane division, the same muntin style, and exterior depth, width, and profile. So the specs say colonial pattern. That 6/6, it's indicated as a 6/6 on Anderson's website. The specs should be confirmed to be 6/1 to reflect the existing. On the casement windows, the commission should discuss the change from 8 light to 8 light and 6 light wood casement windows to 3 light, which is what's described here in these casement specs. In the opinion of staff, the reduction from 8 or 6 to 3 doesn't detract from the house's overall integrity. And so that is 3 in one casement window, and they're paired, so it would be 6 there. The guidelines also note that false muntins or grids should not be used. The specs here say grids between the glass for the new double hung windows. And so the applicant should confirm or revise the specs to ensure that these proposed windows feature exterior muntins and rails. The new casements have simulated divided lights, which can be appropriate provided they have a comparable depth and width to the originals. They've proposed wood, which is appropriate within the guidelines. And then these stained glass fixed windows are not included as part of this application. And the first story windows are not included as part of this application. So staff's recommending approval subject to the conditions that the applicant provide additional information on the windows condition to staff to confirm the windows warrant replacement. Replacement double hung windows feature of 6/1 with exterior muntins reflecting the depth and width of the originals instead of just grid between the glass. And then revised specs from the window manufacturer be submitted to staff reflecting condition 2, and then any additional items identified by the commission.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Lindsay. I see the applicants here. Would you like to address the board, please?
Yes, good morning. I'm Harry Boston from 1202 Luttrell Street, so thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you. We're really happy to be in the neighborhood. We very much appreciate and want to maintain the historic nature of the home and the neighborhood. So downstairs, some of the windows are old, but we can preserve all of them as they are, and there's no reason to work on any of them. We're just going to work on maybe some inside storms and making sure they're painted and well taken care of. Upstairs, we have a challenge. We want to replace those windows because they're one of 3 conditions. And you can see here, this window is a great example. Not only is it rotten, but it's nailed closed, so it's not safe. About half the windows are nailed and glued closed, so they do not work in case of a fire. You cannot get out. Other windows like this are rotten, and it's like an old car. If you're restoring it, there's some pieces you can fix, and there's some you just have to cut out. So I believe on these windows, and window expert with me, Roger, from Anderson and Home Depot. We looked at both the windows themselves and the frame on the outside that has to be replaced just because the wood's rotten. So putting a new window in a bad frame is not going to be good for the house. So what we want to do is there's windows that are sealed closed, there's windows that are rotten, and there's windows that are not original. We want to put it all back to original. All back to exactly what Ms. Crockett said. All back to the original configuration, either the 6/1 or the 8x8, 6x8. But it's back exactly as the original configuration as it is today. The muttons, I'll figure out that eventually. That doesn't come up that often. I just noticed in general conversation we don't talk about those. But the point I was making is inside the glass, and you can probably describe it better than I, but there's actually a etching inside the glass that's black. And then on the outside, you have the external. This is Roger Sayers.
Roger Sayers. Hi, guys. 43 years around the window business, in the window business.
Sir, would you state your name and address for the record?
Roger
please?
Sayers, 1705 Mountain Lake Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37922. I'm the window guy at the Home Depot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're going to use the simulated divided light. Between the glass, there will be a grid. On the inside and the outside, there'll be wood grids. It will look like a true divided light window when it goes in. It's the Anderson Woodwright line, you guys. There's not a better window that Anderson makes. I make an A series, which will allow us to jump into some of the really big stuff that you guys deal with. But for his, the Woodwright window is absolutely perfect for it.
Let me jump in. So the goal is we're not doing this for the sake of we want to replace windows. It's a matter of having modern, workable, energy-efficient windows that are part of maintaining the house long-term, not windows that are not workable or windows that are leaking and are going to contribute to rot of the rest of the house. So that's the goal. And we went for a high, shivering as I say it, a high quality window because we think these are going to last longer than anything else. And they need to because we can never afford this again. So, any questions?
How are you going to treat the replacement frames on the outside?
Oh, we're going to paint them. Yeah, paint them exactly the colors they are now. So it'll look just like it does now, but it'll be new. Yeah, so we like the color scheme. We're not going to change that at all.
I have a question about the change from the 8 light windows to using 6 light windows. Is it an option to get the 8 light windows?
What do we do? Yeah, so it must be it's going to be 8 on the casement, so 4 just like it is on the case. Can we go back a couple, Mr.
Yeah,
Markham,
and
please?
I would
Thank you,
just
ma'am.
say the
We'll-
specs do say 1 vertical, 3 high. So that's
we will-
where I was going. That there
Right,
would
so
be
that's-
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
We will update that, but there's a second spec I probably haven't submitted because you came back. Go on, sir. Come on up.
As soon as you guys give him the approval, my guys are going to jump in and start doing their job. And part of that is making sure this is exactly as we see it. The casement windows that were there will have 3 horizontals going across, and is there a vertical going in? Can't see.
No.
Yeah.
So those are
Your lines are going to look exactly as they are today, you guys.
So it's 4 by 4 on the casements, and then on the double homes, it's 6 over
6 over 1. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
So
sir.
just what you see there is what you're going to get. Okay.
If
We'll
we
make
could-
that clear in the spec.
Yes.
If we could pause just for a minute on this conversation, the neighborhood input, and then we'll come back.
So I did send a written comment from Aaron Streeter, the Fourth and Guild neighborhood representative, to the Historic Zoning Commission, and then I have it's pretty long. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the applicants received it as well, and I'm just going to give a brief summary of that. So the initial paragraph, Aaron said that Fourth and Gill is in support of staff recommendation on this project. However, they're emphasizing the importance of providing the additional documentation requested. The neighborhood contemplated asking for denial without prejudice, ensuring that additional information is provided, and having a good example of what documentation should minimally be provided on future similar applications. So that's replacement of original windows. They don't want this to be counterproductive to that effort. So the emphasis here in that second paragraph is that original windows are significantly important to the integrity of the neighborhood and each individual house. Once it's lost, it is lost, and even a mostly matching appearance is a diminution of integrity. The design guidelines say that original windows should be reused. However, sometimes deterioration is unrecoverable. And so then Aaron goes into talking about old materials and craftsmanship that are better in ways that are not immediately obvious, and they are designed to be repairable. And then the guidelines also do say if they're necessary, then they should be the same overall size with the same pane division, Muntin style, and exterior depth, width, and profile. So the neighborhood has requested a list as fulfilling the design guidelines requirements of items to be submitted to staff prior to the COA being issued. So that's elevations of each exterior side of the house where the windows are going to be replaced, identifying each window, detail photographs from interior or exterior, and then sketch profiles of the existing windows showing the measurements of the individual window components, and then manufacturer's drawings showing that those Muntin's patterns will be matched. They said they're comfortable leaving the judgment up to staff whether the pictured deterioration is clearly irreparable, but if it looks like a carpenter could make the repairs, staff might evaluate whether a good faith effort has been made towards this possibility. And you guys can read the rest of that as well.
Thank
Lynn,
you.
I had a question. So what the neighborhood listed here, items, is it more than what you guys asked for?
When we, in the staff recommendation, it is more. And when our checklist is that we provide to applicants when they're applying is a general checklist. So we don't have a separate checklist for window replacement. Basically, we say photographs of the existing conditions that are going to be modified, and then information to support to depict the new materials. windows. So what they submitted is technically what we asked for in our checklist. One of the things that Mr. Streeter has been suggesting, and I think is a good one, and we've incorporated into the revised Edgewood Park City design guidelines, is a checklist for window replacement in specific. So he's kind of suggesting that this is the documentation that we should ask for moving forward.
It did seem like it is. Perfect.
What I didn't understand in that was what's counterproductive. The sentence into the first paragraph.
He didn't, he said that at first he, as the neighborhood representative, was considering asking for denial without prejudice, ensuring that the applicant would provide additional documentation on the existing windows condition as like a new application, but he thought that that might be counterproductive to the overall effort.
Lindsay, if you don't mind, would you put the staff recommendations up, please? Mr. Boston, I'd like for you to look at the staff recommendations and then take into account what the neighborhood response was, and just tell us your response to the recommendations in the letter itself, please.
Yeah, we are in agreement with all recommendations. So we will provide pictures of the windows. We already have the measurements. We'll provide the specification from the manufacturer showing that it's as we've stated, and the drawings of the product. I think the only thing we don't have is the elevation. That shouldn't be too hard to get. When I went through the list, they wanted the pictures, the elevations, the drawings, and confirmation that would be original. The only thing that we didn't plan on was the elevation, but that shouldn't be too hard. We can make it.
How about item number 2 on replacement to feature 6-1 pattern? You're good with that?
Yeah, that's the 6-1 on the double hung, and then as you saw on the casements, it'll be the 4x4.
So then, I would just follow up on Commissioner Blackburn to say this. The third ask is that the specs be submitted to staff that reflect all these conditions, because this document here doesn't quite reflect
Yes,
all
ma'am.
of those
You
items.
have the original. We have updated it, so we can get one.
When our measure tech goes in to review everything and take the final dimensions of the window product, he's going to have Anderson put together architectural drawings of the window system, so you'll be able to see exactly how it's going to look when it goes into that window system, and it will be precisely what's coming out.
Yeah, I think those architectural drawings are what Lindsay should review. That's a little, if that order is okay with y'all. We've worked with many window manufacturers who have done it that way. I wouldn't think it would be an issue. Do you think it will be?
No, sir.
Okay.
All of this sounds just fine. It's not hard to do. And again, it's the window sit, so it's not just the window, but it's the surround, because that's fairly bad shape, and we want to make sure that that's not leaking water for more rot or damaging any other part of the house. Now, again, downstairs, it's beautiful windows, and we can preserve them just as they are. But these upstairs windows are pretty rough because they haven't been taken care of.
The upstairs windows are dead, and the frames that are holding them are dead. They need to go. They're just dead. I've been involved in windows at Colonial Williamsburg, Abraham Lincoln's home, the Hermitage. If we could save windows, I'm all about saving windows. These are dead. They're just dead.
Ma'am, are you here to represent the neighborhood? Okay.
I think a question that maybe the commission should discuss, the neighborhood is putting the onus on us to make sure that every window needs to be replaced. If we skip the process of asking for documentation for each individual window, what could happen is people could come in full swath replace everything, and it wasn't necessary. Maybe only 10 out of 20 of the windows were really bad, which is kind of what you guys are doing, just addressing the upstairs. But we are held to the guidelines from a legal standpoint. So when it says that things should only be replaced if they have to, I would like to see proof. Did you have more pictures you could show?
Yeah, we said a few
ideally
more.
one picture for every window would be what's necessary.
Yeah, well, we'd have to get inside and outside pictures because it's hard to see in a photo, but this from the inside you can see rot. From the outside you can see that the frame is pretty rotten. But again, then the other parts that you don't see, some of them are like these are nailed closed and rotten. So many of them have been sealed and are rotten, so they're just not safe. You can't exit in the event of a fire. And
So
Mhm. Yeah. No.
And I think that can be reviewed with staff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, yeah, 'cause it
Push
seems
the
like,
hard work off.
yeah, it seems like what it is. She said they did it, but it
Mhm.
includes the ones that didn't. And she would clarify,
Okay. Yeah. Good point.
So we can.
to make those prepare
Oh,
some
sure.
things.
Could I toss in with the glazings that are being used? With the glazings being used today, the low E coatings will give glass a little bit of a green tint from the outside. It's how it's done in the industry today to keep the radiant heat from coming on in through. If you do part of the windows in the upstairs, you do one, and you've got one that, well, if he spends a lot of money, he can put his window back together, and then you stand outside and look at it, it's gonna look wrong. It's going to look like, oh, this one got changed, this one didn't. You can tell the difference. I would suggest that I know what you guys are looking for on the look of this thing, and just doing one or two is not going to do it. It's going to have it stick out like a sore thumb that something's gone on. It'll maintain the proper look when you do all of the windows. It just will.
How many rooms do you own?
13.
Which is
How many
all
rooms are upstairs?
13.
So
we're
what's your
doing-
point?
My point is if 2 of the 13 aren't just as bad as the pictures you've been looking at, and we don't want to do them because, well, somebody could maybe take it all apart, put it all back together again, replace a few pieces of wood and make it happen. It will not look like the window that's sitting next to it.
So then the next point that the neighborhood make for conversation is our guidelines suggest repairing before replacing. And so they're saying precedent should be set that you should prove that it's cost effective to replace all 13 windows as opposed to only repairing maybe 6 of them. It's possible if you find the craftsman to repair some of them, it could save you a lot of money. And so they're wanting to make sure that that's the first option.
I would seriously doubt that you'll find a craftsman who'll take and put those windows back together. If there's one in Knoxville, I don't know them. It's just not something that's done.
The neighborhood guidelines for 4th and Gill for siding specifically stress repairing what's deteriorated and not replacing a full swath of wall. We had a case like that recently. I don't think they go into specifics about windows, but I think that would be the general idea of the guidelines. Is like with something that sticks out that's new and something that's old and repaired, that juxtaposition is normal within these guidelines specifically.
And exactly what are you saying about the glass? You're saying glass these days have a long tint to
Yes, ma'am.
it?
The low, did you say low E?
Low, it's a low emissivity coat. What it is a 2 pieces of glass in the window, the inside and the outside fits together no matter what light. That stops the radiant heat from coming through the house. It works just like a good flashlight.
So you're saying this is from my elementary education. 50 years ago, what type of glass did not exist? So now, the type of glass that's installed now would have that.
Would be the only way to do it.
But that's the issue. The old glass is single pane, wobbly glass, and any new window you buy is going to be a double pane, and it'll either have a gas fill or it'll have a coating to meet the energy efficiency standards. So we're just trying to replace them with modern, compliant, safe, operable windows. that look every bit like the original. That unless you were in there touching them, you wouldn't be able to tell they weren't the originals.
And there is a design guideline that's related to this that's in the packet. I will note that it is from 1999, so the products have most likely changed. But it says tinted or reflective glass should not be used on primary or other important elevations. Low E glass, which selectively removes ultraviolet light, is allowed.
There you go. That's what we're talking about. This is low E glass.
I think, regardless of the low E class, I think what we're asking for is that each window needs to be documented and submitted to.
And again, I think we're probably going to find, well, of the original windows, I don't know that any of them are good. Well, we might find one. But to me, it doesn't make sense to replace 12 windows and not replace the 13th. It's just not going to look right, and it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to spend $40,000 to replace. It's like you have a leaky roof. I'm not going to let it leak in one spot and do the rest. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not trying to change the house for the sake of changing it. I want to keep the historic look because, again, most as you look at the windows, they're either not original or not functional or rotten, and I want to replace it with a safe, workable window.
That's fine, as long as you provide the proof.
We'll do that.
In regards to operability,
Mhm.
I'm not sure what kind of documentation would be most helpful. I do work with these historic
Yeah.
homes. I have dealt with plenty of window issues. Windows being nailed shut is common.
Mhm.
I've also pulled the nails out of the window, and the problem was solved. So I don't know what the threshold to actually prove the level of operability is irreversible. That would be important for me to know that there was effort made to make them operable. Has that ever happened before? Anyone on commission?
Not in my experience, but I wouldn't rule it out.
The neighborhood would probably discuss too. So it's once that documentation is provided, then we can have a better conversation.
I would simply say that in looking at the windows in his home, I choose not to even touch some of them. I was very concerned that if I operated them even a little bit, we were going to have a problem. They're that bad in the upstairs. They're just that bad upstairs.
We'll give you pictures. I'm not sure the picture always communicates that, because we tried to operate it. So many are glued closed. I know, no doubt, if we cut all the ceiling off and pulled the nails out, you could probably move them. But that's not a livable. That's not a way to live in a house. I bet in your house your windows work.
To be clear, I think that what you all are wanting to do is a great thing.
Good.
There's no question that you guys want to preserve this house and take good care of it. And we appreciate you being here and going through this process. Where I stand, I just have to follow the legal guidelines.
Okay. Fair enough.
So,
And we will do that, man. We'll get you the pictures and all the other specifications, the architectural drawings. And we've got a copy of that, so I think we have what we need to comply.
It's a difficult question. And typically, I discuss with some of my colleagues who are also involved in this process. I would probably go back and forth with the property owner and the contractor and just make sure that we have as much information as possible. And then at that point, it's kind of a judgment call based on the discussion that y'all have had here and the design guidelines. And so I can't say that there's a specific process because each case ends up being different. I think it would be helpful for the commission to come to, helpful to me for the commission to come to a conclusion on whether you have a preference to see, say, 1 or 2 windows be repaired and restored and have the rest be replaced, or if it would be a wholesale window replacement. I think that'll be easier for myself and for the applicants involved too. So I think if you guys had a brief conversation about that as well, setting those parameters for staff approval, that makes it easier.
Any other discussion? Entertain a motion.
The compromise we're kind of backing ourselves into is you may end up moving an original window to a single face of the house. If you have 3 of the 13 that can be repaired or salvaged, they could be installed together. Move from one side to the other. Again, this is based on the window's condition.
Yes, sir.
If all 13 frames are bad, then that's something that can be submitted to staff and we can see that.
I think there's also, in the past, there's a threshold of what's reasonable. So if we have a slate roof, 100% of the tiles don't have to be bad to replace the roof. But if 10% are still good, do they interwork them in? I haven't seen that happen. I don't know that we can ever apply a threshold and say, well, if 80% are bad, then you can do 100%, because it's just got to be case by case when it comes to this commission.
But I understand your concern, and we'll see if we can't provide the information to justify it. That's
I think I would appreciate knowing, are y'all comfortable with provided that they show documentation that each window warrants replacement? Are you comfortable with all of them being replaced? How many? I know that's kind of a vague question to ask.
That's not, I think that this information really has to be seen by the commission and the neighborhood as a whole before we have that discussion. I would be comfortable, though, per se, if you say that 10 of them are really bad and you have the proof, go ahead with those 10. And then the remaining 3 then could come back to the neighborhood commission.
we could provide evidence. I'd argue that what benefit to the community would there be of replacing 12 of 13 windows and keeping one old original window when you cannot see it from the street? It's an old and not energy efficient window. How is that a possible benefit to anybody?
There's nothing in the guidelines that supports replacing things based on a threshold of replacement. You know, ideally we evaluate repair items individually. We bundle them all into an application in theory to save time. But really, there's nothing in the guidelines that say if you have 2 bad windows, you can replace 3. If you have 3, you can replace 5. There's nothing in there about that.
No, understood. So we'll try to make a case of what makes sense and what would be aesthetically appealing and consistent with the neighborhood and improve the quality of the home. So we'll try to make an argument from that perspective and see if that gets us where we need to be. How's that sound?
I think Leanne made a good point. Were you saying that if the staff thinks that a couple of the windows look like they could be repaired, that we want that to come back to commission?
Is that a question for Lynn?
I was thinking that's what you said.
Not necessarily. I mean, I wish that it could just be approved by staff and the neighborhood, but that doesn't seem like a good pattern to set. I trust Lindsay, I trust the neighborhood, but
We could postpone the entire application, give the applicant time to submit documentation that Lindsay could review and then present to us next month in 2 months. That's arduous for you on a timeline basis, but it does not put all of this judgment on Lindsay in an email. It may be a better public process.
One of the reasons I would be for it is because this is looking at
Postponing the application could also give the board an opportunity to review the architectural specifications as well. I would like to see, matching putty or bead styles, 5/8, 7/8, the window stops, all these little things that we would want to see in an application that take time.
Mhm.
We could see those as well. In my house that I purchased windows for recently in the last year, I have an original window that is 8 feet from a new window.
Mhm.
They're on the same face. They're on the front porch. They're both visible.
Mhm.
They're going to look a tad different, just not in their styles. Through the spec book, we have the matching styles, but you'll be able to tell the difference, especially in the glass. And I think that's part of it. That's a story of the homes. That's the home story, is its change.
I would note these are second-story windows.
I don't think the guidelines specify any difference in second story or first story windows to support us evaluating them differently.
Okay, we'll get you the information.
Mr. Boston, your response to postponing a month, how will that affect your timeline?
Oh, we don't like it. I'd sure like to get this done before winter, as it takes a couple months for the windows to come. I don't think that you can do anything here, so we'll work with you. I think you need to work on your process, but we'll work with you. Because there need to be clear guidelines. We're trying to follow everything. We'll get you all the information. I'd request that you allow us to give you the information as we proceed. Because again, we surely don't want to replace anything that doesn't have to be replaced. But I would like to have modern, workable windows that look right from the street.
It doesn't sound like the neighborhood's in disagreement with the application. They're in disagreement with the process, which is really no one's fault here.
They just want more information.
They want to set a precedent of that was done. When people look at your house, they want to know that you guys did it right, and this is how you did it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do we send the more information to Lindsay, or do we review it ourselves? I think that's our question. I think we should review it ourselves in hopefully next month's meeting. So I would make a motion to postpone this application to allow the applicant to provide architectural drawings, photos, documentation of the original existing windows condition to be replaced. So we can evaluate this with as much information as possible and make a better informed decision.
Go ahead.
So you're actually going against both staff recommendation and
That's my motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote on this, Alice, please?
Commissioner Blackburn,
No.
Commissioner Eason, Commissioner Bradley, Commissioner Mitchell,
no.
Commissioner Randazzo,
No.
Commissioner Tillman,
Yes.
Commissioner Webster.
What we got?
That is 4 yes and 3 no.
So there you have it.
Very
We'll
good.
postpone till next month and give you time to get your information together.
Mhm.
And I'll work with you guys directly. I'll send you information this
Sounds good.
afternoon so you know exactly, and you'll have the amount of time to have it in for next month.
Good.
So,
Well, thank you. You've been very helpful. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boston. Thank you, Roger. Any other business this morning? Short and sweet. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.